This is Paul Welke for the Dominion. Today I'm at the Corona Criminal Law Office of Student Legal Services of Edmonton with Neil Thomson, Director of SLS. Thank you for having us, Neil.
Glad to have you.
Before we talk about how SLS facilitates access to justice, I think it's important to note that I'm a volunteer and supporter of SLS, just to clear up any bias issues. Now Neil, can you tell us a little bit about what SLS does?
So, Student Legal Services is a student-run organization through the U of A Law School. Includes law students at the U of A, and we do have some full-time staff, but we have four main projects. We have the Criminal Project, the Civil Family Project, Legal Ed Project, and Pro Bono Students Canada also operates under our flag. Each of those projects has their own purview. Criminal, as you might imagine, deals with criminal charges and the criminal justice system in Edmonton and Edmonton area, where we take on summary conviction matters that don't involve a jeopardy of jail time. Civil Family deals with a number of things on the civil side. Most of our issues stem from landlord-tenant disputes, contract issues, employment, small claims, and we get a lot of questions about wills and estates as well. And on the family side, mostly it's issues of divorce, child support, parenting, custody, things of that nature. Now on our Legal Ed project, it's mostly an outreach and legal education and reform project where we make outreaches around the city in low-income areas, community centers, soup kitchens, things of this nature, and try to educate the public with pamphlets and simply being there to talk about legal information with the community. Pro Bono Students Canada, the way they operate through our office, unlike most universities around Canada, they operate underneath Student Legal Services, but we operate with Pro Bono Charter. So we do things like Civil Claims Duty Council, QB Amicus, Tax Project, and we do small research projects as well with organizations that want to have legal information provided to them.
Sounds busy. How many volunteers do you have?
Usually we have over 280. There's been an increase in recent years. This last year we had over 300 volunteers, so quite a substantial portion of the law school does volunteer with our organization.
Oh wow, and just to clarify, all of your volunteers are from the law school?
Oh yeah, my apologies. These are all law students at the U of A. We actually get a number of requests to volunteer with the organization that we unfortunately have to pass on because they're not law students or they don't go to the U of A, but we do get a substantial amount of people asking to be involved with the organization.
Oh wow. How many people does SLS help each year?
Well, that depends how you count it. So we have a number of active files. We have a number of repeat customers who need to open multiple files. And I say customers tongue-in-cheek, of course, because we're a free service. You can also measure it by amount of information we give out, which is very hard to quantify, but we do provide a number of intangibles to the community, such as phone calls. I took down some numbers before this interview, and we had roughly 2,700 phone calls to our Civil Family Project last year.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's a substantial amount of information being given out at any time. And we're also seeing an increase in our file loads every year. So with our criminal files, we had over last year almost 1,200 active criminal files, which is not to say that it's 1,200 people we're assisting, but 1,200 files. I don't actually have numbers in front of me on the amount of principals we're actually assisting at any time, but I believe that amounted to around 1,300 criminal charges. So it's a substantial amount of charges within the Edmonton criminal justice system that actually go through our office. Now, as far as civil and family files go, we have anywhere up to 80 or 100 files active at any time, which we're getting a substantial increase, 10 on one side and 16 on the other respectively, per year. So we are seeing an increase in those number of files. I guess the long and short of it is it's really hard to quantify how many people we help. but certainly a substantial amount in the Edmonton area.
Just to clarify on the criminal project,
Absolutely.
to what extent are your volunteers able to assist?
So once again, we deal with summary conviction matters instead of indictable, obviously, and anything that doesn't involve a risk of incarceration. So we act as legal agents under the insurance of advising lawyers. We can make court appearances, we can meet with our advising lawyers and get legal direction. So we can provide the information through the lawyers who are providing advice.
Okay.
And we can provide representation all the way up to trial, running that trial, or having the trial resolved before it actually runs. I can't remember how many trials actually ran last year, but there was almost 100 matters that were set for trial and went to the day of. Obviously, a number of summary matters don't actually go to trial. They just are set, and then the day of they're resolved before, but we do have the capability of running trials, and it does come to that sometimes.
Wow, so those are your student volunteers that are able to run those trials?
Absolutely.
Wow.
As a matter of policy, we don't have first-year students running trials, but second-year students do have the opportunity to run summary trials if they so desire.
Oh, wow. How does the funding of legal aid affect SLS operations and caseload? I guess this is probably a little bit more related to the criminal project again.
Surprisingly, it also is related to the civil family side.
Okay.
As far as criminal matters are concerned, most of our referrals actually come from legal aid and have for the last number of years. As you might imagine, it's hard to get long-term statistics for the organization as there is a lot of changeover, especially given that our executive board switches every year in the elections. So we replace each other in January, and statistics don't necessarily have longevity in our organization, sadly. But despite the criminal project operating at what you might consider peak capacity, we're still seeing a 1 to 2% increase in file load each year. As said, we're taking on almost 1,200 active files at any time. So that is a substantial load for the students to be carrying at this point. Anything that involves incarceration, we pass off with a referral to legal aid. And oftentimes anything that legal aid finds does not require or does not pose a risk of incarceration, they pass to us. So it's, the files sometimes change hands. And at this point, there's not a substantial increase in the amount of files that we can take in on the criminal side, and there's not a substantial amount that legal aid is getting rid of that we can't take on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So they're, like, legal aid's decrease in funding is probably seeing a little bit of an increase of stuff that comes your way, but not necessarily a huge increase.
Yeah, and to put it bluntly, it's because the criminal side of legal aid has been at its peak. Like, the file load has been at its peak for a number of years now.
Pretty much saturated.
Basically, yeah. Had this been 10 years ago, it might be a different story, but there's not really that much that a change in funding can do at this point. That being said, on the civil family side, we're seeing a substantial increase in the files that we're getting. Over 20% in family files, over 30%. So the funding for what we might consider small civil and family matters, people are finding that they don't have the same access as they used to. We're also expecting a substantial increase in family files over the next year as well, although time will tell what that exactly entails.
Cool. Can you speak a little more specifically about how student legal services fits into the concept of access to justice?
Yeah, and to differentiate this from what we might consider criminal and civil family access to justice, which I've talked about already. Student Legal Services started as a legal ed and legal reform project, and we do strive to continue that within the community. So our legal ed project and PBSC now as well, Pro Bono Students Canada, we try to work together to increase the amount of access to information within the community. You can see this with Civil Claims Duty Council and QB Amicus on the pro bono side, where it's an attempt to streamline the processes within the court system. So not only is it a great opportunity for students, but it's also a great opportunity for the public when they go into something like civil claims intake. They don't have to wait for an hour just to find out that they didn't fill out the right form.
Mm-hmm.
They have a student there who can take their forms and they can be told, fill out this, come back and then speak to the lawyer. In a lot of ways it streamlines.
Helps to streamline.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with the legal ed project, it's certainly part of our original mandate and will always be there, where we're going to the low-income community. As you might imagine, there's a big turnover in the people that we see. There are some familiar faces, but it's a lot of people, and especially in recent years with the economy once again going back down, a lot of new faces and a lot of people who aren't familiar with the justice system.
It's a lot of just maybe helping them navigate through some of the more trickier bits.
And I think a lot of it is people just don't even know where to start.
It can be overwhelming for sure.
Absolutely, and I've seen this myself when you go to something like the youth outreaches, where they don't even know what their problem is, and they don't even know if it's a legal problem necessarily, but they're looking for information on how to solve their issue that's ahead of them. So.
Well, great. Our guest today has been Neil Thomson from Student Legal Services. Thank you for hosting us in your office today, Neil.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And for the Dominion, thanks for watching.